All right, hey friends, I think we've almost got a technique down, so we want to share and record what we're doing, going from Blender to Roblox Studio. So what we're going to do is we're going to, again, look at the Akrich nursery in Morocco, and we will hit delete here, and now we will go to maps.google.com, and we will type in the location of the place we want to model. So Akrich, Morocco comes up, and then we have the cemetery that we want to do. So I'm going to get rid of Paul McCartney here. And all right, so we have this area here that we want to bring into Roblox. And so you right click and you get the coordinates, and they copy to the clipboard, and you come into Blender, and you come into Blender GIS, and you say the web geodata base map, Google satellite, fine, and then hit G for go to, and paste in those, and bring your zoom level up to about 21, and say OK, and wait for the tiles to load, and it is there. There it is. There's the nursery. Zoom out a little bit, and then say, okay, great. That's what I want to take, and that's probably the best resolution I'm going to get. Hit E to get the extent. As you can see, it gives you a plane. And then if you want the DEM data, keeping this selected, you then come to GIS, go to Web Geodata, get the elevation. Hopefully you have an Open Topography SRTM API key, which you get from their website at Open Topography for free. And then that has to be pasted in, and then you say OK, and as long as your extent isn't too big, and this one is not, it should pull that information in reliably. This isn't exactly a very hilly area, so, oh, there it is. And what it did is it just jumped way up there, as you can see. It, instead of being flat, now it is curvy because it has the elevation data. Now that's going to cause big problems when you go into Roblox. So how do you want to deal with that? Well, let's first get our other information. So let's do the top view and come in. You go to GIS again and you say Web Geodata, get OSM, and see if you can get the building's elevation from the object, which is the satellite map here. And the default height is way too big, so I like to go down to about 7 or so. So that's fine. And then say OK, and nothing came up. That's interesting because the other day I had it come up. So don't know sometimes with the web geodata when it's going to come in and when it's not going to come in. Nope, it's facing problems. If that is because of the elevation, the building extrusion, I do not know. I'm going to bring this back up and see if that makes a difference. Not that it should, but you never know. Yep, we're having a problem. So it says in Rand Rage, most recent call. You get these weird things. Float object cannot be interpreted as an integer. I never understand why that happens when that happens. I'm going to put in an integer, and I'm actually going to make the integer 10. Maybe that will help. I don't know. Yeah, it did. It helped. Okay, so it's not a great height. So in that case, I would go into Edit and grab these top parts here. And by having those top parts there, I can then hit G and Z and shrink them down and go back out of Edit. And that looks a little better. So those are on the landscape. But again, as I mentioned, the landscape is really high up. And I just also want to show that the road here, if you want to know what are the real roads here, you can select this map and you can go to Web Geodata, get OSM, and this time do highways, not buildings, as long as the elevation is from the object. And then the roads come in. But I don't really need those roads. I guess the only reason to look at them is to see sometimes people will make them actual roads by expanding them. If you wanted to do that, you could. but I'm not going to today. All right, so the next thing we want to do is, you see that point there, that's the center of geometry for this land mass here, and it's way down there, and it's a mess. And if you go to Object Set Origin to Geometry, then it jumps up there. Same with these objects here. There's a center point down there, so you'd say Object Set Origin to Geometry, and then it jumps up to there. So you can move it. Now, I've tried to bring these into Roblox and into Spatial, and it's a mess because it's way up in the mountains here. And you don't want to do that for those particular programs. So here I would grab everything, and I'd come to my location, and so I think it's 700 meters up in the mountain. I'm going to set this to 0. That's the buildings, and let's do the same thing for this. Oh, it didn't do it. Well, ain't that interesting. The buildings went down, and this did not. So if I grab it and move it down, it's negative something. Oh, look at that. So maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have. Let me go back up to there. Let me do each thing separately. This one is at 0. Isn't that interesting? All right, well, this I'm definitely going to move down to the bottom. So I'm going to drop it down like that. I don't know why it acts as though it's not on the in the mountains, but it is. And because it's tilted, it's a little bit awkward. Probably the best thing we can do, even though it's artificial, is to rotate it. But you see there's that point again, that center point. You have to go back and do Set Origin to Geometry. And it's not letting me do that. How fascinating. That is a real trip. Like, you'd think that that point belonged to this. Maybe it did. Maybe that point is now from the buildings. Where are the buildings? They're way up here? They are way up here. No, they have their point there. Well, that's where I can set that to 0. And that building goes down as it should. So I'm a little confused as to why that point will not move for me. Set Origin to Geometry. Nothing happens with that. Sometimes if you apply the transform with Control A, then it disappears. And maybe that's all we needed to do. So those buildings have a point, and it's kind of, well, yeah, so it was apply the transform. So you always have to do Control A and then apply all transforms, and then you get that. All right. So now when we look at this, it's, I guess it's okay. I mean, it slopes down. The land definitely slopes down, and maybe we want that. So I'm going to allow that to be. I'm going to save this now as, I'm going to save this as Akrich for Roblox test, and save as. And then you go and you say, fine, I want to export this, but how big? Well, when you export this model, and I'm going to select everything, when you export it, you have to export it smaller or Roblox will never take it. So the scale, you can try 0.01, and I'll show you what, sorry, 0.1, so 10% of the size. We'll do selected objects, and we don't want animation. So you can try that and export it as an FBX. And let's give the right folder for it too, which is the exports. So this one here. And then when we go into Roblox Studio, if we, I'm going to open this up, and you'll see what we tried to do yesterday in class, and it was quite a mess. So there's the distorted model that we tried to put in, and it got crazy. Like, where is that in the world? Like, what are we doing with that? So I'm going to get rid of that landscape because it was such a disaster. And I'm going to get rid of this model, and that was a disaster too. And now that I'm there, I'll go to the base plate. All right, so that's my base plate for Roblox. And I even have a car that I put in. So zoom. So that's going to be fun when we have the car. The base plate is usually supposed to be at 0, 0, but apparently it isn't. It's supposed to be position, size, transform. We'll see what happens. So we have this car and we have this base plate. If you go to import under model, no, sorry, under Home, Import 3D Models. When you scroll through, you get plugins, View, Test, Avatar, Model, Home. So at Home, there's an Import 3D Model. And if you go into your folder and find the one that we just did, which was Akrich for Roblox test, first thing we should do is take a look at how big it is. That's rather important. So let's go to Details, and it's 226 kilobytes. So that's not too bad. And we will open it up, and it gives an error message. And the error message, it says, descendants contain one error. And it says that the error is, under File Geometry, it says one of the object's dimensions are larger than can be imported. So 10% or reduction by 10 times is not helpful. So we're not going to import it like that. So let's go back to Blender. And instead, this time, let's go to File, Export, FBX, and let's make it 0.01, which is 100th of the size, keeping all the rest of it, and overwrite that. And now come in and let's look at the folder itself. Once we come in here and go to Home and 3D File, Akrich Buildings, Akrich Buildings, 225. So it doesn't seem like it made the file that much smaller, but now there's still a error, but the error is that it doesn't have the base color texture on it. And that is not a horrible thing. So when we go, and I don't know what just happened to it, like why is it not showing up? Collapse. There it is. Okay, so it's not showing up, and that error says what file folder has the picture. So where does the picture come from? Well, the picture comes from Blender, and it comes from when you click on the landscape. Beautiful, Nye. When you click on the landscape and you select, no, I can't, Nye, I'm working on this right now. Nye, sweetie. So we need to go into, Nye, please, I'm in the middle of a recording. Sweetie. All right, so when you're looking at this, this object here, one of the things that you'll note is that it is, when you select it and you go to UV editing, then we should see, there we are. Oh, that's weird. Like, why is it showing up way down there? It doesn't really matter right now, although maybe it will matter because it's like, it's not in the position we thought it was. Hold on. Like, where is, no, it's proper. Huh, okay, so in UV editing, anyway, we want to use that, and obviously it's clipping, so I need to go to the view and change my clipping like that, and like change my clipping, make the end, I usually like to make the end of the clipping like 10,000 or so. All right, so there it is, and that there, when I click on select all, that's what the plane looks like. And then you say, because it's got the Google Sat Map there, you say image, save as, make sure it's a PNG or a JPEG. I like PNG. I think because it has an alpha channel, which I'm not using, but it's nice to have. And then Google Sat is the right name for it. But I can also give it another name like Google Sat WM Roblox test. And then save it, because I've done this a whole bunch of times. Now come in here and find that Google Sat. Oh, and where did I put it? I put it in the wrong folder. So I wanted it to be in this folder. So let me try that again. Come here and say image, save as, and I'll go into the folder. Yeah, that went into the temp folder. So always be careful of that. I didn't read my folder. It defaults to a temporary folder. Instead, I want it in shapefile exports. And now I'll save as image. And having that now coming into Roblox, I simply tell it the base color texture is this Google Sat Roblox test image. And bang, it appears right there. Okay, so we should now be able to import it. Note that it can be added to the workspace, insert using scene position. I don't know if I want to do that. Set pivot to scene origin, file transform, world forward up top. And these are things that we might have to deal with, but it is dealing with it properly. And so we import it. And now, when it comes in on the base plate. Thank God. So when we go to play, we will see the character, and he's way up, and you know why that is? That's because I put his spawn point up in the air somewhere. I'm going to get rid of this spawn point. Base plate's there. Where's my spawn location? I'm going to delete that. Sorry. Let's put in another spawn location from models here. Choose spawn, and then take the spawn point and drop it in down on the plate. All right. So let's see if we can influence its moving down. Make sure it's sitting right on the place, and I really want it to be at the entrance. The entrance to this spot is over. Bring it up there and bring it to here. So that's the spawn place. That's where we want the person to enter. But you can already tell that the person is going to be a giant. So when we hit play and you spawn, he's huge. Another thing you saw is that the darn thing came in and fell. The world fell, this thing here. So one thing I can do is move it. Well, that's the end corner. So I want to anchor it. So there's a thing called anchor right here, and you turn that on. Now that world will not fall. The base plate is still a bit weird, so let me put that like that. Now when we come in, the world isn't going to fall, and he can walk down the terrain and onto those buildings. But he's a giant, and that is not the way it really is supposed to be. So I made it 100th the size, so I should be able to come in here and pick this plate and tell it that the scale is not 100, sorry, not 1, but 100. Now I bring it up, but it's really scaled weird, right? But it is 100 times. And then you'd have to go into rotate and rotate this down. Because it got really messed up relative to the plate. But at least it's on the plate. I mean that. But look at what happened when we scaled it. The buildings became like way messed up. And that shows us that you don't want to bring in models that are complex. You're going to have to build in Roblox separately. So back to the drawing board. I'm going to take this out. Sorry. Delete. No, come on. Delete. Okay. And let's try this again. But this time we'll go back to Blender and we'll say, hey, you know what, Blender? I don't want to do the buildings. I just want the terrain. So when you do select the terrain and you go to File and you go to Export into FBX, you say just selected objects. And I've only selected the terrain, not the buildings this time. I'm keeping it at 0.01 and I'm going to export it again under the same name. I'm just going to overwrite it. Now I'll come back into Roblox and I'm going to Home and Import 3D. And I will go back to the test there, although it doesn't look like, oh, it saved it in that other folder. Watch those things. So again, export, FBX, what folder are we in? Shapefile exports. No, that's the right one. So it should save it there. Let's see, Akrich Roblox test. It's interesting. Date. That's the one. It says it's 7:14 and we just resaved it at 7:26, so we'll find out if it has the buildings. Nope, doesn't have the buildings. So that's good. And it seems to recognize the export Google Sat thing, so that's good. The base color texture is there, and we will then have a file transform. Now, I wondered if we could set the size, but we don't do that here. Okay, so we import it. And we get it there. All right. So the base plate should be, the base plate is under here. And when we zoom to the base plate, that's there. Where is our Roblox test? So it's interesting. It's not at the base plate. Let's see. Oh, the position. And where is our spawn location? Spawn location is down there at the base plate. So something went wrong. And this is the sort of thing that drives me nuts. Like, where then is our thing? Is it way up here? Way down there? What did I do wrong? Oh, lordy. Okay, so let me delete that. And let me go back. So we want to take this one here. We want to export it. I have to make sure, by the way, that this is at 0, which more or less is. Okay. And maybe I was supposed to apply the transform, but if I go now to export as FBX, it is 0.01. I'll say test2 just to make sure that I'm using the right one. And I'm going to export it. I'm going to come into Roblox. Let's look at the base plate here. And that selected import 3D. Test 2 is there. Open it. Everything looks okay. And I think it worked. Or it's way, way high. I don't get that. It should be that the 0, 0, 0 is the position. So that when we look at the base plate, it did work. Okay, so that's the base plate at 0, 0, 0. It came up really high. I don't know why, but I was able to bring it down to 0, 0, 0 successfully. And then I need to bring it up to 100 times the size again. And that's where we get this weirdness from this, so that we have to rotate this. And there it comes. And move it. But at least the buildings aren't a part of this. No. Somehow its pivot point is this corner, which is really weird. And let's look at it from the top. That's the back. There's the top. And let's then move it into place. I wish that Roblox had better tools for moving stuff, because it's rather annoying. But at least we can see that if the bottom corner is touching the base plate, then we have this. The landscape is so messed up. Like when you do it 100 times, everything about it is like distorted. And that is a big problem with this when you're doing the scale. Maybe the scale, if the scale had a XYZ and you could just change the X and Y scale and not the Z scale, that would be really nice. But this is the pivot scale. World pivot. Position. XYZ. So I'm not really sure. So many different things in here. So the Z value, there's no slider. I mean, if I put this 0, it's just changing the pivot point. So maybe my problem is I was changing the scale of the pivot instead of the scale of the mesh. So let me back out of that and see if I go bang, 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 bang. Okay, so that's at that size as it came in. All right, so there's Akrich, and it is on the landscape like that. So instead of the pivot point scale, I should be doing the mesh scale, and the mesh scale is part. It doesn't seem to have a mesh scale. That's what's freaking me out about size is here, but size is an X and Y and a Z. And if I make this 100 times bigger in X and 100 times bigger in Y, but I don't make it 100 times bigger in Z, and let's see if that satisfies. Oh, that doesn't look good. Oh, because I'm sorry, dumb. Okay, this is not Blender. This is Roblox, and in Roblox, Y is what they call Z in Blender. So it's the X that needs to be increased by 100, and the Z that needs to be increased by 100. There we go. Now we are onto something. And we're so onto something that that little Tesla car there can be moved on the landscape and literally moved on the road. And it should now, it should be the right size. So our Tesla car, I'm still moving it down. There we go. That's when it comes onto the ground. And then it can be sitting on the road. And it does look like that 100-time scaling has actually worked. Hallelujah for that. That's great, because now we can rotate this car to make it face a certain direction, and you could drive to the place. So it is looking promising now. And it's on the plate. Now the base plate is there. The spawn location has to move. So we zoom in on that and bring it over to the entrance. And I think I moved it way too low. When that happens, we can go to the position of the spawn location, and we can make that position at a Y of 0. All right, what is good? I'm gonna get up. And when that happens, I get really frustrated. I just delete the spawn point. If I can delete the spawn point, like get out of my face. I just want to, okay, delete the spawn point. Let me go back to the nursery there, and I'm just going to add another spawn point. So drag this in, and then those little yellow lines tell us that it's on the ground. And we can bring that closer. And where did we put our car again? Our car is on the road way over there. It'd be nice if the car was near us, so let's go and grab the Tesla Roadster and bring it all the way over toward our spawn point. And then gonna bring it up because it is not, it's under the landscape, so bring it up. Bring it up, bring it up. There you go. There's our little Roadster. And bring it near the spawn point. And let's rotate it like that, so it's ready. Okay, and then of course the landscape needs to be anchored there. Spawn point doesn't, and the car will fall to the ground, so it's fine. So when we go to play, our little guy is there. He looks like he's about the right size relative to stuff. He can get in his car, and he can drive around the landscape. Oh, it's going to go off the cliff. We're not careful. All right, so it seems like the sizes are okay. And then we can start building up the rest of the model. So that's how we need to go about it. All right, so I'll close this one, or I'll keep this open for now because I'm going to replace all of this. I'm going to go back to Blender because this is not my full Blender file. My Blender file that I'm going to use is actually Akrich Nursery for Spatial Modeling. So I'm not going to save this. I'm going to come right now for dinner. I'm going to go to this one here, and here I have a model that is much better for, it's much more complex. So in the next video then I'm going to show how I take this model and bring it into that same Roblox game and even put a skybox in, now that we know that it is working. All right, so long for now.